Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Cybersecurity Recruiter Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Christian Espinosa. How you doing, Christian?
I'm doing well, doing good. I'm getting ready to go to Vegas and see Sammy Hagar, so that'll be exciting. I think it might be like one of his last shows, but I watched some videos the other day of the concert, and they're still rocking.
Yeah, cool. You're a very well-travelled man. Whenever I pop my LinkedIn open on my phone, your face often comes up, and you're often very nice and very different location or destination. So there you go.
Yeah, it's to Vegas, then I get back on Friday, then for Saturday I leave to go to France. So yeah, I guess that's right. I do travel quite a bit. I just got back from Florida. So yeah, sometimes I like to be still for a little bit, though. It's easier to get things done and be productive when you're not always changing hotels and getting on airplanes.
Yeah, it is. So I've been there myself. You're setting up your workstation and you get to some spots and they're great and perhaps not from a productive perspective. I'm actually going to the south of France, not for work, for pleasure. One of my friends is getting married. So I'm actually on a stag in the south of France as of next Thursday. So we'll probably be geographically quite close to each other. So
I'm going to Nice for a few days and then going to Monaco for the Formula One race.
Okay, yeah, because I'm flying into Nice on Thursday and then I'm going down to Saint-Tropez. I'm not going to the F1, but I will be most definitely watching it with a beer or two. Yeah, we're pretty close, but yeah, all around there will be great. It's the weekend to be in and around that area. Listen, that will be a great, have you had that planned for a while or that'll be mega?
I had the F1 planned for a while and just before and after the race in Monaco, that was just firmed up a couple days ago, maybe yesterday.
Yeah, very good. I'll definitely be keeping a lookout for the photos on LinkedIn.
For sure.
But no, Christian, welcome to the show. I'm genuinely looking forward to this one. I know you've got a story, and every time I talk to you, it's been a nice conversation. I know we've spoke a lot about traveling and Dubai and various things, so it'll be good, my friend. But for the listeners that don't know who you are, Christian, I'll do you a bit of an introduction. If I get anything wrong, feel free to correct me. But yeah, started off a fair few years ago back in the US Air Force. And you came out the US Air Force and progressed straight into a security-related role and then held a consultant position and then fairly quickly progressed up to director level, held a role as an InfoSec-related instructor, Bear Grylls instructor here as well. I can see it. It'd be nice to hear the backstory there. Cybersecurity instructor, also had a cybersecurity business called Alpine for a fair number of years. You are a author, founder, speaker, and that initiative is called Shrinking Ego. You're also a podcast host yourself, which I've also seen on LinkedIn, and you are also the founder of Blue Goat Cyber. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Thomas.
Yeah, it's nice to have you. I know you've given us a bit of an insight, and I know I've done you a bit of an intro, but I'll start where I always start, which is what's a day in the life like? What do you get up to? And what's going on in your world, my friend?
A day in the life for me is really about trying to figure out the big things to work on, the most important things, the big dominoes, I like to say. Okay. I'm working to build Blue Goat Cyber. I'm working to become the market leader in MedTech cybersecurity or medical device cybersecurity. So that there's a lot of levers to work on to get the right team in place, get the right marketing message, get the right clients, and then also make sure I'm managing my health and my relationships and trying to find that balance. So yeah, today, a typical day is probably like today. I got up at 5 and I recorded a podcast between 6:30 and 7:30 as a host. And then I had a sales meeting and recording one now with you. And this afternoon, I'm going to the airport to fly to Vegas around 2. So in between now and then, I've got like 4 meetings, a couple internal and a couple sales meetings. And I'm just trying to get other things done as well when I'm not in the meeting.
Yeah, cool. I hope you've got a good credit card that gives you plenty of air miles because I'm sure you're racking them up if you've got the right one.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe 10 free trips a year on American. And then Marriott, I have the Marriott cards. I probably stay 20 free nights at Marriott's a year at least. I stayed last year outside of Dubai at a Marriott luxury brand hotel called Al Maha. I used all my points and it was awesome. This year, I'm using my points to stay in Saudi Arabia. I think it's called Numra or something. They have these like over-the-water bungalow things. It looks pretty cool.
Oh, wow, yeah. The stuff they're building down there, like they're building a ski resort. They have this attitude of if we build, they will come. And it seems to have worked okay for Dubai. And Saudi really seem to want to catch them up. But yeah, I've not been down to Saudi. But yeah, I think things are changing down there pretty fast, aren't they?
Yeah, there's some friendly competition between, I think, Qatar, UAE and Saudi, like who can become like the next destination. Dubai definitely has, the UAE does, but I think Qatar's catching up and Saudi's starting to catch up. Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. So, Christian, it'd be nice to get into your business journey. It'd be nice to get into the growth and progression you've had over the years, some of the speaking you do, the podcast. It'd be nice to hear about that. Before we get into all that, I know you've originally transitioned out of the US Air Force, and there'll be a lot of people listening that are probably doing that now or coming out of the army. A lot of people in security are on that journey. Is there anything you wish you knew now about that transition into the commercial space that could help folks listening?
I think I did my transition pretty well, actually. So what I did, it was a stepping stone transition. I decided what I wanted to do before I left the military and really started preparing. I wanted to be like an IT MCSE and then progressed into cybersecurity, Microsoft certified systems engineer. So I started getting certified with that, doing a lot of courses on how to build my resume. And then I would literally go to every interview I could do just to get better. I felt worst case, I don't get the job. But for me, I need to practice. And then what I ended up doing was taking a defense contracting job, like an Air Force contracting job. Basically, the building across the street from where I worked is active duty. So the transition was pretty simple. Took off my military uniform, drove to the same base, and went to a different building. And I actually worked with a lot of the same people. So it was a very easy transition for me. And then later, I transitioned fully into commercial. But that was like a stepping stone. And I think that's a good one because
It is, yeah.
Your environment's not completely different. It's very similar. You just have a little bit different role.
Yeah, that's like a really smooth transition because you've created like a halfway house for yourself and got that commercial experience. But yeah, literally across the road, you probably couldn't have done much better there, mate, really. You've probably done pretty well.
Worked really well. Ironically, I was in the Air Force. I didn't travel that much in the Air Force, but that first contracting position I took in the Air Force, we traveled to every Air Force base in Europe and all the reserve Air Force bases to help optimize and secure their computer network. So it was a lot of travel. It was very fun. It was really fun and racking up the miles.
Yeah, that got you the travel bug originally, maybe.
That, and I've got a super competitive friend. We always are asking who's been to more countries. I think I've got close to 80 now. He might have me beat by a few, but there's always like this competition every time I talk to him.
Yeah. Do you know what? You strike me as the sort of guy that you perhaps don't do things by halves. I'm looking at him like, hang on, Bear Grylls instructor, entrepreneur, like flying around, speaker, podcast host. I'm like, if you're doing it, you're doing it properly.
Yeah. I generally think if you're going to go after something, it's worth trying to master it unless you feel like this is not something I want to do any longer. I just jump into it and try to constantly get better.
No, I definitely agree. I was brought up in that way. You either do it properly or don't bother. If you're going to do something, you might as well stick with it and give it a good old go. It's much more fun that way and much more impactful for everyone around you and everyone you come into contact with. Yeah, I think it's a good ethos, mate. And yeah, I think you should stick with it. It's good.
Yeah, it can be exhausting, but it is definitely a good ethos. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So you had the halfway house and then stepped into the commercial world and then progressed from there and met the leap to being an entrepreneur. I'm imagining that was pretty scary. A few sleepless nights. Was it? How did that go down?
I guess now I think about it, the same thing. I worked for a commercial company where I basically did penetration testing against commercial aircraft to make sure they're secure and military drones and make sure they weren't hackable. And I had a run-in with the CEO. There's like this consistent friction. It was causing me like massive stress. So I just decided, you know what, screw it. I'm going to quit and I'll figure it out. This is the first time I've ever quit something without having another job lined up. So I just said, I'm quitting. I can't deal with it anymore. Fortunately, I was able to change my relationship with that company. So I still did the commercial penetration testing of aircraft that work, but as a contractor through that company. And then I started doing freelance work, like the instructing cybersecurity courses around the world. Then after about 5 or 6 years of that, I decided to start my first company where I had other people on my team. So it wasn't like freelance or solopreneur work anymore. It was a legitimate company with a staff. Like that's where the sleepless nights started happening, the stress, because when you're responsible for a team and a lot of people, it's a lot more challenging and a lot more responsibility than just being responsible for yourself.
Yeah, no, definitely. So much like coming out of the Air Force, you had the halfway house there of being a freelancer, then made the full jump over. But yeah, I'm experiencing that myself. Like as a recruiter, recruitment, we call it billing. If you're just billing on your own as a recruiter, like looking back now, that just seems so easy. all of a sudden when you've got people around you, even if people are good, and there's that pressure on your shoulder, and obviously there's overhead there as well, which with overhead brings pressure to perform, whereas before it was maybe, looking back, it was perhaps like almost a bit of a hobby compared to having a team. But yeah, that transition can be, I find it scary as well.
Yeah, it's for me, it was super stressful because, like you said, if you're doing solopreneur work and you have a slow month, it's okay, I don't make as much money. But when you have a team and you have payroll, you can't have a slow month because you still have to make the payroll. So that causes another degree of stress. It's not like you can reduce everyone's payroll because you had a slow month. People aren't going to appreciate that.
That never goes down. And it's surprising, Christian. Like, I've had so many founders and CEOs on and people like yourself that are doing and have done very well. And it's amazing how stressed people have been at times. And it's amazing how many large companies had on. And in the early days, they've said they've been sat there and they're literally sat there on the Monday, not quite sure how they're going to make payroll on the Friday. And I've had countless people say that. And it's, whoa, it's, yeah, you can see why the stress levels are high and you can see why it's not for everyone. But maybe in a way, like, it's secretly quite fun as well. As looking back, it's probably quite fun. Maybe not so much at the time, but I don't know. Maybe that's my rose-tinted positive mindset on things. I'm not sure.
I think looking back at, I don't know if fun's the right word. It was definitely forced growth. I think when I was doing like solopreneur work, it got very routine and very simple after a while.
Yeah.
But when you're trying to scale a business, payroll, the complexities just keep adding on. You have to solve problems over and over, and the problems get bigger, which is a sign of growth. So for me, I think there was aspects of it that were fun. Now that I look at where I am now versus then, and the things I thought were serious matters then compared to now were not that serious of a matter. But for me, it was a journey, the forced personal growth journey.
Yeah. So basically, your risk tolerance just drastically increases as time goes on. You just get better at dealing with the stress. Is that it, would you say?
I think the risk tolerance increases, but for me, I think it increases because my resourcefulness and my resilience have increased as well. Like, I'm confident I can figure things out, where so 5 years ago, maybe I wasn't quite as confident, but now I've got the connections. I've been through things. I understand things a lot better. I've taken the time to master things. So I think the risk that I'm willing to take goes up because I know I'm capable of more. They're tied together, I feel. And I never really quite thought about it until you positioned what you stated that way. But yeah, I think there's a direct correlation.
Yeah, I like that. And it's interesting to hear that's the journey you've been on. It's quite exciting to hear that's the journey you go on. Do you find as things get bigger, like maybe as the company, maybe like you talked about things getting more complex, do you find as if the company doubles in size, maybe the complexity just maybe triples or quadruples? Like, what's the kind of growth journey you've been like in that respect? Do things get a lot more complex or is it quite incremental?
Well, you have to be very strategic about it because right now, if I look back on my sales team size 8 months ago, I think I had 3 people, and now I've got 8 or 9. So in order for that to work, you have to have a system in place. You have to have ways of onboarding people so they're trained. And our systems that are onboarding are not perfect right now. So before I bring anybody else on, we've got to get them in a better state. Otherwise, you just run around all day putting out fire, and your people are frustrated and they're not being productive. And it actually, I believe, takes you in a couple steps backwards because all the chaos is created without having those systems in place and that training in place.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when you're remote as well, you've got to be quite intentional about everything you've just described there. Maybe when you've got that luxury that we used to have of managing with proximity or just shouting across an office or speaking across an office, when that's gone, I think those things you described probably increase in levels of importance, don't they?
For sure. Yeah. It takes a lot of, you have to have the right team, really. I think the biggest thing is making sure you hire the right people. And I was just talking about this with my VP of sales yesterday. He went to sales leadership training. He had a list of all these things that should be number one priority. And some of them are like customer satisfaction, product fulfillment, timelines, accounting. And one of the items was sales leadership. And I chose sales leadership because I believe all those other things can be solved with the right leaders on your team. But if you don't have the right leaders on your team, all those other things just keep growing and the challenges keep coming up and you don't have a cohesive way of resolving anything.
Yeah, you mean having the good leaders, the right leaders around you as the business expands, so you're not having to constantly do everything.
Yeah, 100%. And
Yeah.
I had my company evaluated a few months ago. And one of the things on the evaluation is a leadership team. They want to make sure you have a leadership team in place so the company is not solely dependent on the founder or the entrepreneur that started it, because that's a liability ultimately. At some point, the company should get to a point where it can exist without the founder there all the time or the entrepreneur. Otherwise, the two are always married. And if you look potentially exit or sell a company, that presents challenges.
Yeah, I like that. And do you know what, Christian? That I think you said, "Oh, I had my business evaluated." I think that's quite a big thing to do because I think a lot of entrepreneurs, and I know you've got something called shrinking ego, and this maybe ties in quite well with it. But I think a lot of entrepreneurs might be almost their egos might get in the way of having their business evaluated. But you've probably shown like a level of humility to have someone else come in, strip everything back. You've probably had to leave your ego at the door, and I don't know. Maybe that I don't know if that would be quite difficult for some people to do. I think it's a really good thing to do, but. Yeah, what was it like?
I'm getting my business evaluated because I'm moving it to a trust. There's this thing called a 678 trust, and the trust has to buy your business. So you have to know how much the business is worth. And it was in a couple of factors. My previous business, my first real business, Alpine Security, I was not profitable. I don't think I was profitable when I sold it. When you looked at the overall EBITDA or earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. My company now, when they did the evaluation, I showed positive, like quite a bit. And I didn't know that. I thought the company was losing money, but according to the financial calculations, we were actually quite positive, which means, so on one hand, I'm happy about it because I've done things better. But on the other hand, I'm like, uh-oh, now I've got this freaking tax burden with the IRS. It's too late to change anything. So I'm like, oh, I didn't plan for this massive tax burden. I thought we were going to have a write-off. So I was happy that I make a company profitable, but surprised about it. And then reality set in. I better figure out how to save a bunch of money for these taxes.
Yeah. No, listen. That's probably a good problem to have. You can't, I don't think you don't want to be knocking yourself too hard for making money. Not all, man. But Christian, which is like your second entrepreneurial journey, what are the key learnings this time round? Like, how are you doing things different? What do you know now that you didn't know back then? It'd be nice to get your view because not everyone gets onto their second business and stuff like that. So you've probably got a unique perspective here that could help me and the listeners.
I think I made just about every mistake in my first cybersecurity business. I had this idea that everybody needed cybersecurity. So everybody was my target audience, which meant I wasn't marketing to anybody because my message was super diluted. And it took me a while to figure that out. And now with Blue Goat Cyber, we've niched down to medical device cybersecurity. So our clients are medical device manufacturers that have a very specific problem. They're trying to get the device cleared by the FDA in the United States or by MDR in Europe. And messaging is much simpler. The value proposition is much simpler. And my team is much more focused because now we're not trying to do endpoint security, audits, pen testing, training. We're doing something very specific, very niched. And it doesn't just help with the messaging, it also helps with like Google Ads. I tried to run Google Ads my first company, but I'm trying to sell pen testing to who? To everybody? Now I know exactly what I'm selling and who I'm selling it to. It makes it much easier to target people. And the company and the team, it's easier to scale when you focus on one thing as well. Because my team is constantly asking, maybe we should go after a different industry. And my gut always says no, not until we master MedTech, cybersecurity, until we take over this market and figure out how to take it over and dominate it and get everything in place. And that's a repeatable process, then maybe we'll go after robotics or a different industry. But until then, it's like we're just taking suboptimal habits or even bad habits and try to apply them somewhere else, which I don't think is a successful strategy. And I think of my first company, I kept trying to do that. I kept kind of object syndrome. Over here, somebody dangles some money. Maybe you should do this. Maybe you should do that. And I just kept doing it, and it never really got great in anything. Just got good at stuff versus mastering it.
Yeah, I really like your point about making it easier to scale as well. I presume you mean from the people on the team dealing with the same types of problem across different manufacturers and different devices and stuff like that. I know from recruitment, since we've had people coming in, when you're getting the same types of roles across different companies, it makes it easier because they've recruited that role before, they can do it again. It becomes quite a repeatable and scalable process. Is that the similar sorts of benefits that you're getting across your team by just staying in MedTech?
Yeah, it's getting our knowledge base down because it's very specific in MedTech, getting that dialed in. And part of this trial and error, like you have a client, they have specific problems, you solve it. So now you have that knowledge and it's very specific to an industry. Then the next client is not as big of a challenge. But if you're constantly going from one thing to another, you're not really leveraging what you're learning in one specific area. And you're not able to build, because what we do is we build internal training for our team. So if a new team member comes on, they could log on to a platform, take a course, take a quiz, and we can monitor their progress. It's much harder to do that if you're like doing it on 10 fronts versus one specific thing.
Yeah, no, definitely. I like the way you're doing it, staying niche. I know from stuff you've got going on with your podcast and the stuff that I see you do on social that you're taking quite a community-led approach as well. And I feel like that's like the modern way of building a business, like the whole smile and dial thing and picking up the phone, I think definitely still works. But I think doing it this way that you're doing it is a much more fun and nicer way to build a business as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. MedTech is a small community, and the biggest challenge from my perspective is really a lack of awareness about cybersecurity. So part of what Blue Goat Cyber is working to do is raise that awareness, because it's not just a cybersecurity issue, it's a patient health issue as well. If a medical device manufacturer, if their product is delayed to market by 6 months because of cybersecurity, there's a patient that could use this technology that doesn't have access to it. And also, there's a high probability that device manufacturer may go out of business. 9 out of 10 of them fail. And a lot of them have great technologies that will alter healthcare. So we want to help get these technologies onto the market, help the manufacturers succeed, and help them on the market securely, obviously. And I think part of that is just raising the awareness so people start thinking about cybersecurity earlier on in their product roadmap versus kind of as an afterthought at the very end.
Yeah, cool. Do you know what? I bet you and the team really get into it because, like, cybersecurity is tapping into a level of like sense of purpose, but this is maybe that on steroids or that times two because you've got the health side and the cybersecurity side all rolled into one. I can imagine you all getting quite into it.
Yeah, it's quite a bit different than traditional cybersecurity because the risk is much greater. With traditional cybersecurity, somebody may be able to steal your credit card information or intellectual property. With MedTech cybersecurity, somebody can hack into a surgical robot and maybe paralyze you, or somebody could hack into a drug infusion pump and increase the flow rate of a drug that could kill you. Somebody can hack into an implantable like a defibrillator and shock you to death. Somebody can like delay a treatment for an in vitro diagnostic system and give a misdiagnosis or that. So the risk is much greater, and we take it seriously because the last thing I want to do is say a device is secure and then it gets on the market and somebody hacks into it and a patient dies. That's a scenario for me. So I want to make sure we are extremely thorough. It's kind of like testing aircraft. You want to make sure a hacker can't get into an aircraft and crash the plane because people could die. What we're doing is very similar. It's just instead of the FAA, which is for aircraft we were dealing with, now it's the FDA for medical devices.
Yeah, you definitely I hear what you're saying. It doesn't get much more serious than what you just described. The security posture needs to be good. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Is it a big jump from pen testing, say, I don't know, a web app, mobile cloud, like a standard web app, to jumping into MedTech? Or was it a big jump for you to go from aircraft to medical devices? Is it quite a steep learning curve?
I think the learning curve was easier going from aircraft because it's a regulated industry. So you're dealing with the FAA and regulatory bodies that have specific requirements. Whereas web app pen test, you may have SOC 2 or something, but it's not as stringent as the FAA for aircraft or the FDA for medical devices. So with medical devices, you have to look at what the FDA is looking for with a penetration test, which they want specifics with fuzz testing, have specifics with even like software application security testing, software bill of materials, dynamic application security testing, threat modeling. They have very specific requirements which go above and beyond typical penetration testing. That testing has to be carried out in a specific way. So most of us are familiar with like ISO 27001 or OWASP. With medical devices, there's a way to calculate risk based on patient safety, which is based on ISO 14971. And there's a way to look at cybersecurity risk, which is based on AMI 5.7. So we have to look at how these two in the middle from a risk perspective. And our risk methodology has to be unique to a medical device as well, because traditionally we look at likelihood or probability is one of the matrix. The other is impact, one of the axes on the matrix. With medical devices, we look at exploitability. The FDA wants it to be more objective than subjective. So exploitability is based on
Mm-hmm.
So anybody could come up with the same score given the device and the way it's deployed in a healthcare delivery organization. I guess the short story is there's a lot of nuances that make MedTech, from my experience, it's challenging, but it's also from a business perspective, it's good because there's a barrier of entry for people to get into, because you have to know all these other things which are specific to MedTech and the FDA, and there's a lot to learn.
There is, yeah. It sounds intellectually like it's a heavy lift, but so like, yeah, it will probably decrease the competition. And I'm imagining when you get into it and you can, you become a genuine expert in that area, which is obviously great for all kinds of different reasons.
Yeah, you've got all the international standards, because MedTech is international. You have people that want to sell it to the United States, but also Europe. So you've got all the ISO standards. You've got all the MedTech specific terms, like we deal with neurostimulators and we deal with implantables. So we deal with a lot of surgeons and medical procedure terminology, and then you got all the cybersecurity acronyms as well. So it's combining those three is challenging, and I've got somebody on my team that's an expert in regulatory affairs, so they understand all the regulatory side of things. I got somebody on my team that's a doctor, used to be a cardiac surgeon. Somebody on my team that's a nurse, so they understand the medical aspect. And then I've got cybersecurity people too. So I've got a confluence of these three disciplines, and we all work together to meet our industry's demands. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's really cool. There's a guy I'm going to send you. I don't know this guy, but I'll send you his details when we finish recording, Christian. He's been in the medtech space recruiting at like a leadership level for a long time, and he's basically got like a film studio in his office in the US. I forget where he's based, but I know he's very well known in the medtech space. So I don't know if there might be something useful for you there. But his name's Joe Mullins. I'll send you it over. He's got a podcast in the medtech space, but I know I've just listened to some bit of stuff. Yeah, you might find it quite interesting. I don't know him, but if you reached out and did a show there, it might be pretty cool for you. But yeah, it sounds like you're having some fun. It sounds like very stimulating. Sounds cool.
Really a dull moment for sure. Yeah. It's even more challenging because the FDA in the United States, they're very vague on their guidance. They say this is recommended, but then it's really mandatory. So we have clients that'll like sometimes try to argue with us and say, the FDA says it's recommended. I'm like, that really means required. So then they'll try to submit something or leave something out, and the FDA comes back and says, you didn't supply this. We have to educate the client or the prospect and say, just consider it required, even though they're saying it's recommended or it's guidance.
Cool. On the security for like pen testers, would you take pen testers without the medtech experience, or do you want them to already have that base knowledge there? Do you work it?
So pen testing is a very broad area, and I've interviewed a lot of pen testers, and 95% of them would not be good at medtech cybersecurity. The primary reason is it's very different testing a mobile web app than it is testing a medical device, because we have to test every hardware interface. So that's RFID, NFC, USB. It doesn't matter it could be a proprietary interface. We have to test every single hardware interface on the device, Bluetooth low emission, any entry point in the device. And then that device often connects via Bluetooth to a mobile application. So we have to test the mobile application. And that could be an Android, it could be an iOS. And then that often connects to a cloud via an API. So we have to test the cloud. So we have to test all these things. And finding a pen tester that has all those is pretty rare. Most penetration testers don't have a lot of experience testing hardware. And we have to test all the hardware interfaces on medical devices. And they communicate with specific protocols that are unique to healthcare, like HL7 or DICOM, which most people are not aware of. The lack of hardware testing expertise is the biggest gap. with traditional penetration testers.
Yeah. So what would transfer well then is someone with a pen testing background who's been dealing with embedded systems and hardware for a long time. That would be ideal for people wanting to get into the space.
That would be ideal, but we'd also want them to know how to test a web app and a mobile. Otherwise, they have to put 3 or 4 people on a project versus 1 or 2. And I understand there's importance in being an expert at one thing, and we always have 2 pen testers on a project, so we each other's work. But if you don't know mobile or web app, and you only know hardware, then there's a gap. So ideally, you would know more than just one area.
Yeah, cool. Sounds good. Yeah. Christian, I'm just going to jump over. So author, speaker, podcast host. Where do you find the time first, and what's going on with all those 3 things? What do you get up to with all those 3?
I decided to write a book because I was frustrated with the cybersecurity industry. My first book is about really bringing emotional intelligence into a already highly rationally intelligent industry, because I feel like the biggest gap in cybersecurity is most professionals want to be smarter than everybody else, and they don't have the people skills, and there's resistance to learn the people skills. So the first book was about what I did in my first company to solve that challenge. What worked is what I put in the book. And I noticed when I did solve the challenge in my company, I had to let some people go. They simply didn't want to evolve. I had to change my hiring process. So I looked at cultural fit first, core value alignment first, before I looked at technical skills. And my team, once I got it dialed in, became much more cohesive and collaborative. And our clients went from one project, more of them converted to being annual clients because I had a relationship with them. It wasn't a transaction. So that was impetus for the first book. My second book, I just decided, kind of like what you were mentioning earlier, I don't like to dabble too much in things. I feel like I've already put the time into learning how to write one book. So why not leverage that for my next book? And I'm working on my next book now. So I feel like I've got the process figured out. I've got lots of thoughts and ideas, and it's going to be faster the next time. Like my second business, I've done much better than the first. So why stop at the first one when you can leverage that knowledge? Yeah, so that's my goal with the books. And my goal with the book, the first one was focused on emotional intelligence, like I said, for cybersecurity. My second book is really focused on how to find a balance between being hyper-focused on a big goal and missing out what's right in front of you. Like for me, I used to get so hyper-focused on this massive goal that I would put blinders on and ignore everything in front of me, and my relationships would fall apart and everything else. So it's really about finding that balance. And my next book is about the story we tell ourselves and how it's either holding you back or moving you forward, and how to change that story based on my own experience. So I guess to answer your question, I'm trying to help push humanity in a positive direction if people are interested in my book. It's not quite done yet. It should be done in a few months. It's really about, we all have this story, there's the inner narrative, and sometimes we get trapped in that story, including myself. The book is really about my own journey, and hopefully other people can learn from it. And the story might be, like, example I like to give is, it might be someone that says, I just don't believe in divorce. I'm not somebody that believes in divorce. That's their story. So they stayed married for 40 years in a crappy marriage where neither of the partners very happy. If they would have stopped to think for a second, is this story me or the person I'm with, or is it actually holding us back? And if it's holding us back, what could be a different story? And that's just an example. That applies to everything in life. Like a lot of people, I'm too old to do this. I know a lot of people that they're in their 60s and they say, I'm too old to ever go for a run or do a triathlon. My knees hurt. And I'm like, I've seen 87-year-olds finish an Ironman triathlons. They didn't have that story, that narrative. So what was it about them versus the other person? It's like, how do we get someone to shift that story? And it's really about how I've been able to shift my own story, because I had to shift it when I had blood clots and almost died, and then was on the blood thinners, and I was told I couldn't do anything but sit around and never run and all that. I had to shift my own story. So it's about how I was able to do that, and hopefully other people can learn from it.
Yeah, thanks for that, Christian. So you were told you couldn't basically do various things, and you managed to prove the doctor wrong by just pushing forward.
Yeah, a couple years ago, I had developed 6 blood clots in my left leg and almost died. Thanks to a portable Doppler ultrasound, a medical device that diagnosed me. I'm still here.
Yeah.
But after that, it was very life-altering, because before that, I was doing Ironman, triathlon, running, biking, swimming. I felt very confident in life. And after that, the doctors said, you can't run, you can't exercise because a clot may break off. You can't fly in a plane, and we talked about to travel. You can't sit in a hot tub, and I didn't really sit in hot tubs. It was like all these things I cannot do in my life, and a lot of those things are the major things I did do: travel, run, do Ironman triathlon, or go for a long hike or whatever. I basically just sat in my basement taking blood thinners on the couch watching reruns of Yellowstone, and I got super depressed. And the story I told myself then was, I should be grateful that I'm alive. And that was a story initially, but the story eventually shifted to where I felt trapped. I felt, is this really the life I want to live? And then I had to change the story again to think, this is not the life I want to live. I want to live life fulfilling for me. And I decided to stop taking the blood thinners, get every test done on my blood, get another test out of my leg. And I made that decision to change my story from one of being grateful, but like quietly discontent and quietly just checked out of life, to one where I'm taking control of my life again. Everything shifted. That's when I decided to start a new business. My relationship improved, my health improved. It's like this shift in my story really changed everything in my life. I can see how easy it would have been to not change that and just stick with that. I can't do this, I can't do that because I'm on blood thinners and blah, 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 blah. And I may have a clot for the rest of my life. And I chose not to accept that story.
Yeah, good for you, mate, as well. It's a good story. I like that because, a lot of people would have probably not been as resilient under those circumstances. Yeah, it's good. I like that. It's good.
Yeah, I also had to realize I saw this doctor for like 12 minutes. And does that doctor care about my life as much as I do? Probably not. And does that doctor know what my risk appetite is? Probably not. Does that doctor did they ever find the root cause? They did not. So there's a lot of things that I think we tend to sometimes put our life in the hands of somebody else. Our parents are making these decisions for us, our children, our peers, the doctors, our social circle, whereas no one cares about your life more than you. So I think it's important to take agency over your own life and make your own informed decisions.
Yeah, definitely. And you've just shown such good mindset there as well. And it can be related to so many different things, whether any setbacks in life, whether that be health, business, work, whatever it might be. Mindset is just everything, Christian, isn't it? Just everything in life.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Good, mate. And now you're back in business, off to Monaco next week. So things have turned around for the good.
Yeah. I've been able to do a half Ironman. I travel. I started a new business. But if I would have stuck to my story, I might still be sitting in that basement watching. I probably would have finished Yellowstone, some other depressing show probably. It's just probably not. Someone told me once, it's probably not the right choice. If you're already depressed, you're watching Yellowstone, which is not exactly a feel-good show.
Yeah, good. And just jump in as well to the stuff about communication and emotional intelligence within security. I just think that's becoming more and more important. Like that communication piece I see it with the clients we've got now, just putting more and more emphasis on it. Years ago, I think you probably could get away almost with that basement hoodie up, sat in a dark room, not wanting to talk to anyone. But those days are long gone, aren't they? Like that communication piece really matters, especially in the consulting world.
100%. Rarely do you have somebody that doesn't have to interact with another human being, right? And I write about this in my book. It's like I had people be defensive. I don't need to get along with people, is what they would say. I'm like, well, don't you have parents? Don't you have a spouse? Don't you have children? Wouldn't these skills help you in other aspects of your life besides work? And you've been complaining why this person got promoted instead of you, and this person got promoted because they're not as technical as you, but people like them and they can get along with other people. It's like this weird resistance to change in cybersecurity. Yeah,
definitely. Unless, I think I said this before, but unless you're going to do bug bounty on a freelance basis, earn a fortune doing that. Apart from that, I can't think of many other scenarios. But even that, again, surely you want to interact with people and have a good time. Like, surely that's a bit more fun than just refusing to. I'm with you.
I think some people would prefer not to interact with people, unless it's virtual. It's okay if it's on their phone, but not in person.
Yeah, cool. All right, Christian. Look, we've shot up to an hour here. It'd be nice to hear what's on the horizon over the 2 years, 3 years for Blue Goat Cyber. Any kind of big crazy goals or big plans in place?
The goal is to become the market leader in medical device cybersecurity. So I want to be synonymous with somebody thinks about MedTech or medical device cybersecurity. It's automatically tied to Blue Goat Cyber. That's the goal. And that's why we have a podcast. And you asked about why I did a podcast earlier. It's really to promote the brand and help with that awareness. And I'm hoping to get there within a year. I feel like I only have a couple competitors in this space. I don't feel like they're as hungry as I am. And maybe in several years, I have a number in mind. I'm 54 years old right now. I'll be 60 in years roughly. By 60, I have a number where I want to be able to exit my company and have that much of an exit if I desire. It's not something I'm tied to or married to, but it's a goal I'm striving towards, because I believe that if you set these big goals, you have to change who you are or change how your company's structured to hit them. And that journey is what matters much for me, more than setting like a small goal and just making little tweaks. Because I remember I took some entrepreneur class once and somebody said it's easier to go from 1x to 10x than from 1x to 2x. So it's easier to 10 times your business than to double your business. And it's because you have to totally change how you do things. And once you get that new infrastructure in place, a new mindset, the growth will happen a little easier than just trying to like minorly tweak things. And then those minor tweaks may not actually get you to 2x, whereas those drastic changes will get you to 10x. So yeah, that's my plan, to set those big goals and become more resourceful, more resilient, and increase my risk appetite along the way.
Yeah, good. Yeah, cool, mate. I'm just going to, the last question I'm going to ask, Christian, is just about, I know we've mentioned some of your books. I always like to ask guests what book or podcast or what online content you're consuming that's making you a better version of yourself. It could be cybersecurity related, it doesn't have to be, but yeah, anything out there that you're consuming at the minute that's really helping, that could help other people?
I think it depends on what your goals are. Right now, I've been listening to Alex Hormozi's book, $100 million Offers. I think there's a lot of good nuggets in there if you're starting a business, trying to increase your sales. So I've been listening to that. I was also thinking about this book I wrote about in my first book. I think it was by Gay Hendricks. And it's really about the gap, but it was about this thermostat we all have, this internal thermostat. And no matter what we do in life, we tend to bounce back to that. And the thermostat could be, my weight is always 195 pounds. So you may lose weight to your ideal weight of 160, but if your thermostat is set as 195, you're going to sabotage yourself somehow and go back to that weight, as an example. And I was thinking about that in my own life, because I felt like I'm trying to get this next level, and I find myself doing things like subconsciously to sabotage, to go back to this like comfortable thermostat setting I have. And yeah, I wish I knew the name of that book, but I'm pretty sure it's by Gay Hendricks. It's a really good book as well.
Yeah, have you heard Ed Milet, the speaker, motivational?
Yeah.
I've heard him do a talk, and he's talked about that thermostat thing as well. And yeah, I was like, yeah, do you know what? This is like really ringing true, because you can just do little things to, or sometimes like when things are going, I can almost start to feel a bit anxious and almost a bit like, oh, something's bound to go wrong, or you can almost feel yourself like stopping. I don't know if that's something in the subconscious or whatever. So
yeah,
it probably is.
Because it's getting uncomfortable at the book's called The Big Leap. I just looked it up, but yeah, it's
okay.
I remember that book talking about the thermostat thing, and I, like you said, I feel like, why am I feeling anxious? Why am I feeling this? It's like this subconscious thing where my body or my actions are trying to take me back to this thermostat setting that I have. I just need to change the setting. That's part of the journey.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Christian. It's been nice. I expected to have a nice conversation with you, and it has been. And I know you're a busy man, and so thank you for your time. And do you think we did okay? Think we about smashed it?
Yeah, I think we did. I was concerned. I can't tell if this mic is working.
Yeah, no, your sound sounds absolutely fine. Sounds really clear and loud. It's good.
Okay.
Thanks again, my friend. It's been really nice to see you, buddy.
Yeah, thanks so much, Thomas, for having me on. I appreciate it. I've enjoyed the conversation.